Are we recording, Andrea?
Yes, we are.
Fantastic, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Winner's Circle. Today is April 17, 2020. This is RE/MAX Caribbean and Central America. The topic for today is 80-20 during COVID-19. Welcome to your tribe, guys. This is your tribe. We're here to support each other. We're in this together. We are RE/MAX Caribbean and Central America, the region that you see on the screen. I am going to turn this over to a person from St. Martin. That is a very interesting island because it has two sides, French and Dutch. His name is Mike Dish. He's the region owner of the rights for the entire island of St. Martin. Mike, good morning. Are you here? Unmute yourself, please.
Hey, good morning, Ricardo. I'm here. How's everybody today?
Hello. Good morning. Doing very well. Thank you. Glad that you're here.
Right.
What's going on?
Ricardo, because it's different today, I wanted to welcome other brokers and agents from Caribbean Central America to our meetings here. We just put it up to everybody because, you know, we're in interesting times and we're all in this together. So we want to open it to our peers, the industry, and welcome you all. So welcome to the family. We hope you come back on Fridays and enjoy it with us. Before I to Ricardo, I wanted to share some of today's meeting. We had Contos. He was the guest speaker, and it was really cool because we had so many regional owners. We had Portugal, Turkey, the Netherlands, China, Saudi Arabia, Mongolia. We had people from everywhere, and they're all in different stages of this crisis. And it was great to hear, you know, what their path was in the beginning, what it is now, and what their focus is. So it's a great learning experience. Some takeaways I took from the talk with Adam Contos, the CEO, that I thought the most important things in life are food and shelter. And all of us here are real estate professionals. We provide half the operation. So shelter is what we do for people. And you know, our jobs are important, and people will continue to want to buy and sell real estate. The other thing that was every challenge has and victors. So what do you want to be? I think everybody that's to be a victor. So how do we go about doing that? Well, we do it by leading, by taking action, by staying in touch with everyone, by being consistent, open to new ideas, learn to do business in new ways like we are now. One of the other things I thought was really cool was an equation he brought up, says E plus R equals O. And E stands for the event. Well, that's coronavirus. We had it, you know, it's a big deal. But R is your response, and how you respond is going to equal O, your outcome. So if you follow and implement the things we talk about here, I know your outcome is going to be positive in this. So everybody, you know, maintain hope, keep working, and let's move forward. One last thing for other than the ones that are outside the RE/MAX agents, remember to continue to leverage some of the amazing tools at RE/MAX Center, specifically for marketing, and also RE/MAX University, where you can continue your education and, you know, better yourself in the professional real estate business. So I will leave it at that for now. It's great to see all these faces here. You're all welcome here every Friday for this, and we hope more of it and discuss more. And I will pass it back to Ricardo now.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Well said. And I'm glad that you welcomed all the people that are visiting us. We have real estate professionals that are not with RE/MAX, but we are welcome to be here. At RE/MAX, we say that we cannot manufacture masks. We cannot manufacture respirators. However, we can provide support, education, inspiration, shoulders. We're in this together, and we're glad that you're here. With that, let's move on to the main part of our program, what you've been waiting for. I want you to meet a person that is based in Belize. He's my partner, John Turley. John is co-owner of RE/MAX Caribbean and Central America. He also owns a franchise in Belize, And he has won the Lifetime Achievement Award, which is one of the biggest or the highest awards that from RE/MAX headquarters, RE/MAX at the world level. So he is mainly known as
Oh, hi.
Hello, John. How are you doing?
Excellent, Ricardo. How are you?
Doing
Good to be
fantastic.
here.
We're happy that you're here. We're looking forward to learning from you. So please take it over.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to talk about the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle. And a little bit later in my conversation with you, I'm going to share about how I came to join RE/MAX in the midst of the recession of 2008 through 2010. It was August 2009 that I actually joined RE/MAX. And it was because of the recession. That was a big impetus or motivation for me to make the change from being an independent brokerage to joining the local RE/MAX office in Ambergris Caye, Belize. But I'll touch more on that a little bit later. But my reason for leading with that is that I joined RE/MAX in a time of crisis, and I joined RE/MAX because it was a time of crisis. And I want to talk about how RE/MAX can help to support each and every one of you in this time of crisis that we face. But I also want to talk about tools that we can use and things that we can do so that we can capitalize and effectively make lemonade out of lemons. There's no doubt that this is very trying times, very difficult times, unprecedented as far as what any of us have gone through in our lifetimes. But that doesn't mean that we have to just stop and be paralyzed like a deer in the headlights. There are things we can do to better ourselves, to better our families, for self-improvement, for our business, and to prepare ourselves for what comes next, which is the after we get through the current crisis and situation. So we're going to go back to the late 1800s, 1895, and there was an Italian economist by the name of Vilfredo Pareto. And what he discovered really in his garden, first of all, he had a pea garden, and he observed that 20% of the pea pods in his garden generated about 80% of all of the healthy peas. And being an economist, he was curious if this could be found in perhaps other areas, other facets of life. And this observation led him to discover that 80% of all of the land in Italy was owned by just 20% of the population. And as he looked and looked further and further, he found that this principle or this law that came to be named after him was found in almost every facet of life. And we can boil it down to this, that in any given situation, about 20% of the input or the activities are responsible for 80% of the output or the results. And like I said, we can see this everywhere in our daily lives. If you were to look in your closet right now, which don't get up and go and look in your closet, but if you were to, you would see that you wear about 20% of your clothes 80% of the time. In any given book that you read, 20% of the pages contain about 80% of the most valuable information. When you look at a company, about 20% of its customers or its clients, or in the real estate business, our clients represent about 80% of our business or our sales. And even when it comes to YouTube, 20% of the videos on YouTube generate 80% of all of the views and the subscribers. And so even within that, we can refine it even further. Many of you know that I'm a big proponent of a book by an author named Perry Marshall entitled 80-20 Sales and Marketing. And in that book, Perry talks about how the 80-20 concept goes even further, that you can look at there being an 80-20 within that 20%. So if 20% of your clients represent 80% of your sales, then within those 20% of the 20%, which is 4%, is going to represent 80% of the 80%, which is 64%. So if I look at all of the clients I've had over the last 15 years, and I've been involved in 1,700 real estate transactions in the last 15 years, 4% of my clients represent about 64% of those 1,700 real estate transactions. So the sooner I can identify who those 4% are, the more time, focus, and attention I can spend on helping them, because they're going to end up becoming even bigger customers more loyal customers, customers who purchase even more property, more real estate. Now, the inverse of this is also true. It means that the other 80% is only generating 20% of the results. Now, this is not a universal law, and it can vary in different situations. It's not always going to be exactly 80-20 in every situation. It's going to be in some cases 70-30 or 90-10, or in some cases 99-1. It could be that drastic. But it's the concept that we want to make sure that we get. The point is that the majority of all the results come from a minority of causes. So if we can identify what the most productive causes are, we can get a higher outcome, greater results, more benefits with less effort. Doesn't mean we become lazy. It just means that we become far more efficient. Now, once we understand the basics of the principle, we want to ask ourselves, how can we apply it in our everyday life? Well, what is the most precious resource that each of us has? It's our time, right? It's the one thing that each and every one of us has the same amount of in our day. Every single one of us has exactly 24 hours in our day. But most of us don't use that time efficiently. There's a difference between being busy and being productive. And most people think that the more hours we work, the more we'll get done, that there's a direct corollary between the two. But that's not necessarily the case. It's not about the time that you put in, it's about how well you spend the time. And if you haven't applied the Pareto principle in your life yet, then you very likely may just be busy. And unfortunately, busy doesn't equate to being productive. Now, when the principle is utilized correctly, it enables us to do more, to accomplish more by doing less or having less output. We can even use a Pareto analysis on our friendships. If you look at who your sphere of influence are, who your acquaintances and your friendships are, 20% of your friends most likely give you 80% of the fulfillment and joy that you get from social interactions. The other 80% of your friends are only giving you 20% fulfillment. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that you cut out those 80% and they're not your friends? Well, no, of course not. It just means that you don't have to spend an equal amount of time with all of your companions. Simply put, spend more time with the 20% who give you greater fulfillment. The same is true with our clients. The same is true if we're a broker and we've got many agents and we're trying to determine who can we spend more time coaching and mentoring. And quite often what we do is we tend to spend a great deal of our time helping or working with those who perhaps give the least amount of return. Where if we spend more time focusing on clients that are repeat clients and agents who are productive agents and give the coaching and the mentoring that is necessary, then we're going to see that there's a greater yield or a greater benefit. Now, the Pareto principle can be applied in almost any area of your life. Obviously in business, in your free time, health and nutrition, even your marriage and relationships, you can apply the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle. If you can identify the 20% that produces the greatest outcome, then you can spend more time doing that to create an even greater payoff. And it also helps you to cut back on the 80% of things that waste your time or only create 20% of the results. It encourages you to think efficiently and to focus on what is actually the most important. Now, I mentioned the one book, and if you haven't read it, I would ask you to jot this down and make this part of your reading list. The book is 80-20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall, P-E-R-R-Y, and then Marshall, M-A-R-S-H-A-L-L. And another big proponent of 80-20 is Tim Ferriss. In fact, his first book was really all about applying the 80-20 rule. His first book, The 4-Hour Work Week, was inspired by this concept. And that's another great book to add to your reading list, especially now during these times when we're all practicing social distancing and we perhaps have more time for reading and self-improvement and education. By focusing your most productive tasks or goals, it'll help you to reduce your workload and help you to find success without having as many tasks on your to-do list. Doesn't mean our to-do list goes away. It just means we hone in and focus on the things that yield the highest outcome and are the most productive. So I want to give a task to each of you. You may not have pen and paper in front of you. You can do this after the call. But I would highly encourage that you do this today, that you make this a priority, to take a sheet of paper and on a piece of paper, write down 10 goals for yourself. And then ask yourself, if you could only accomplish one of the goals on this piece of paper today, within 24 hours, which one goal would have the greatest positive impact on your life? What is the single most important goal in your life right now? Now, because of COVID-19, I'm going to put a qualifier on this, okay? Because it's quite possible that you might be coming up with a goal right now and you say, well, this is what my goal is, but it's not achievable, John, because there's nobody flying into my market. I can't share real estate. My goal is to increase my sales this month and to have more sales and commissions this month. And that's not achievable, John. I can't do it. So, why even make a list of goals? So I want to put a qualifier on this, okay? And I'm sure that regardless of religious denomination, regardless of religious affiliation, you've probably heard of what is called the Serenity Prayer. And so whether you start it with God or Lord or higher being, or if you're just asking the universe to be granted the serenity to accept the things you cannot change, the courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference, okay? So the qualifier is apply the Serenity Prayer to your list of your 10 goals, so that when you make your list, you ask yourself, what is your most important goal in life right now, which you do need to know, by the way, if you want to be successful, but it has to be something that you can change, something that you can control, or that you have control over, okay? Because we want to keep this in the wheelhouse of what we can control. The things you cannot change, don't put that burden on your shoulders, okay? It's not going to accomplish anything. If you can't change it, if you can't affect it, then just put that to the side and focus on the things you actually can change. After you've identified number one on your list of what's the most important thing that you can work on, your most important goal right now in your life, then pick the second most important goal on your list. And after you've completed this exercise, you will have just applied the 80-20 rule. You will have determined the 20% of your goals that will help you more than anything else that you can do, probably more than the other 8 goals on your list combined, okay? The second thing you do after you've made your list of 10 goals, you've identified the top 2 that are the most important, most productive, most impactful on your life today, right now. The second thing you do is you work at those goals that you've chosen, and you work on them all the time. You work on them tirelessly and relentlessly. The most valuable tasks that you do each day are often the hardest and the most complex. And what we all have a tendency to do is to not focus on the 2 most important things that have the biggest impact in our lives, and instead we end up trying to deal with all the little tiny things that come up that we want to clear off our plate, get off our list. It makes us feel a sense of accomplishment to be able to say, I got these 5 or 6 or 7 little inconsequential things done for the day that ultimately don't impact or change or benefit us other than being busy work. So resist the temptation to clear up the small things first. That's the greatest killer, is to get so involved in little things, and little things just multiply and multiply. They become more and more. And what will happen is if you start each and every day working on low value tasks, you'll soon develop the habit of always working on low value tasks. And you'll get to the end of the day realizing that you're tired and exhausted, and you'll say to yourself, I just don't feel like I got anything done today. So one of the applications, one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do, and I try to implement this in my life, and it's made a huge, huge impact for me, is when you wake up in the morning, dedicate the first hour to working on your goal, what the single most important, most impactful, most productive thing is that you can do. Spend at least an hour focused on that. It may be the hardest, most challenging, most tedious, most difficult thing to do. It could be exhausting, and that's exactly why you likely want to procrastinate from doing it. But focus on your most important goal and just apply yourself, and it's so critical to do so. There was a study that was done 3 years ago, and Brian Tracy, who's a great trainer, speaks a lot about the 80-20 rule and when it comes to goal setting. And he shared in this study that was done 3 years ago, looking at rich people and poor people and how they applied goals in their life. And what he found was very interesting, that 85% of wealthy people have one big goal that they work on all the time. And only 3% of poor people have a big goal and they don't work on it very much. If you want to be wealthy, do what wealthy people do. And I'm not saying that being wealthy is the most important thing. I'm just saying that when it comes to goal setting, pick one goal and pursue it like crazy. And I wanted to tell that story about goal setting and to give you that task to do before I told you about my joining RE/MAX in August 2009. As you are aware, back in 2009, we were in the midst of the recession. I sat down and made a list of my goals. And one of my goals was to survive the recession and to be able to stay in business. But I told myself that I wanted to come out of the recession being the most knowledgeable real estate expert in my market. That was my goal. This was the market of Ambergris Caye, Belize, an island of 22,000 people in Belize. I had lived there for 4 years at this time. I'd had an independent brokerage, was very successful with an independent brokerage. But I realized, I saw the handwriting on the wall, and I realized that if I wanted to come out of the recession stronger, that first of all, probably half of the independent brokerages weren't going to survive the recession. That was what I felt, and I turned out to be correct about. And I decided if I wanted to have the greatest opportunity, the greatest potential to come out of the recession, not just surviving it, but really thriving, then I needed to join forces with RE/MAX and to leverage the expertise, the network, the training, the education that RE/MAX had to offer. So I joined RE/MAX in August 2009. And my goal at that time, my most important goal, because I went through this exact exercise that I'm giving to all of you, my goal was to outlearn everyone else in the market. I wanted to be the single most knowledgeable real estate expert about my market. That meant I wanted to take as much training as I could, watch as many videos in RE/MAX University, to get as many certifications as I possibly could, to attend seminars, to read books, to do everything I could. Now, a byproduct of that is that I wanted to make more sales as an agent. As a broker, a byproduct of that is I wanted to recruit and hire and train and retain more agents. But my short-term goal wasn't to make more sales, because in the heart of the recession, it was a challenge to try to find new clients and new buyers until people knew when we had reached bottom and when the tide was going to turn. So instead, I focused on, well, what's something I can control? What's something I can change? I can't control buyers getting on the plane when the plane isn't flying. I can't control the market being on hold or on a temporary hiatus, but what I can control and change is what I'm putting into here, what I'm putting into my brain, the knowledge that I'm cultivating, the education that I'm expanding upon. And I told myself that my personal goal was that if I can outlearn you, then I will out-earn you. And so I told myself that I'm going to take this crisis, I'm going to take this recession, and I'm going to capitalize on it. And while everyone else is sitting on the sidelines kind of waiting for it to end, I'm going to dive in head first and apply myself as much as I possibly can to self-improvement and education, because that's the one thing that I can have control over. It's the one thing that I can change. We didn't have a MLS in Belize. Many of you don't have an MLS in your markets. So I decided I'm going to study sales and sales history and sales comps and what's for sale in the market. Because we didn't have an MLS, I had to go to individual websites of all of the competitors. But I made sure that I knew what was for sale in the market better than anybody else in the market. I made sure that every potential video that could have an impact on me in RE/MAX University, that could help to educate me, make me a better salesperson, a better coach, a better trainer, a better broker, I took in as much knowledge as I possibly could. And the result of that is that I saw my sales increase during the recession as opposed to decrease. That wasn't my specific goal to have my sales increase. My specific goal was different than that, but the byproduct or the outcome is that that's what resulted. Now, one of the other things that I did at that time during the recession, and this is applying the 80-20 rule, and I would encourage each and every one of you to do this as well, is you've got the time on your hands now to go back and look at your past clients. And I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to suspect that the same is true of you has been true of myself. If you look at your past clients, just by a show of hands, how many people who have a client who's purchased more than one property? If you're an agent, or if you're a broker and you're not a selling broker, if you have agents, how many of you have had a client that bought more than one property? Keep your hand up. How about more than 2 properties? How about more than 3 properties? More than 4 properties? We could keep going, but I noticed that the hands that were up with 2 properties are still up. What I did back in 2009 when I joined RE/MAX is I decided that I wanted to apply the 80-20 rule. We didn't have as many buyers coming into the marketplace in the recession because people didn't know when it was going to end. They were on the sidelines. People are on the sidelines right now, not knowing when are we going to be past the peak? When are we going to start to return to a semblance of normalcy? So I tried to identify who are the top 20% of my clients that result in 80% of my sales. And what I found was that if I honed in further, if I looked at the 80-20 of the 80-20, it really was true. 4% of my clients represented more than 64% of all of the sales that I made. And so I focused on those 4%, and I called them on the phone, I emailed them, I gave them VIP treatment. They became the ultimate VIPs for me. And I told myself that if I focus on them 100%, I'll likely get good results from it. In 2010, one of those clients purchased 110 properties. Now, they were all cheap, I'll be honest. They were all $10,000 to $12,000 properties, but 110 of them adds up. And it was a specific result of focusing on the 20% of clients that result in 80% of your sales. So I'm going to challenge you right now. If you have a past client list, if you have a client database of people who've purchased property from you, take a look. And it may be that you have the time right now to reach out to each and every one of them and to make personal contact. But the challenge I'm going to put before you is that if you do the suggestions that I'm making, if you go to RE/MAX University, if you become certified in self-directed IRAs, if you work on accreditations, becoming an international real estate specialist, IRES designation, the SIPS designation, Certified International Property Specialist. If you work on these designations, if you learn as much as you can through RE/MAX University, reach out to your entire client database and tell them that that's what you're doing. Tell them that during this time of social distancing, during this time when tourism is down and flights aren't flying and people aren't traveling to our countries and our destinations, tell them what you're doing to better yourself, to improve your knowledge and your education to add value to their lives. Let them know the courses that you're taking. Let them know the videos that you're watching. Let them know the certifications that you're working towards, to let them know what you're doing to add value to them, to prepare yourself, to better yourself so that when the market reopens, you are better qualified, better suited, better educated to serve them and their needs, okay? I highly recommend each and every one of you do that, okay? There are things we can do today that ensure that on the other side of this, we're going to come out stronger. We're going to come out with larger market share. And you can, I got to tell you, it's incredibly powerful to your client and empowering to you if you work on your education now and you share with your clients and your database what you're doing to be the expert and to become even more of an expert in your market. Just anecdotally, to kind of share with you, how I've been doing this myself. Like I said, back in 2009, 2010, I tried to identify my short list of who were my most valuable clients. Well, I did this again starting about 6 weeks ago. And 6 weeks ago, I reached out to just a handful, no more than 5, my probably top 5 clients of the last 3, 4, 5 years But I can tell you that 2 of those clients, one of them has purchased a total of about $3.8 million of property, which is 8 properties over the last 5 years. And in the last 6 weeks of reaching out to them, and first, look, before I tell you the outcome, let me tell you what I told them. I told them that right now, there's no flights to Belize, the borders are shut, there's no tourism, there's no ability to come and look at property. I feel there's going to be a great buying opportunity, and that I feel that now is the time to capitalize. And if they want to look at buying properties adjacent to properties they already own, let's start making unsolicited offers. And my client said, God, that's brilliant. I love it. Because I bet nobody else is buying in the market right now. I love it. What a great idea. Let's do it. Find out who the owners are. I want to start throwing some offers out there. 4 more properties have gone under contract with this client in the last 6 weeks. The other client, because I said there were 2 of the 5, the other client has purchased 15 properties over the last 3 years. And I used the same approach. I went to them and said, I think now's the time, now's the opportunity. Even if you don't want to make any offers now, let's prepare ourselves so that as we come out of this, as the market reopens, let's make sure that you're capitalized to take advantage of a buyer's market and to be ready to make some offers. And they said, you know what, if you feel that we can, make some unsolicited offers and get things on the table, let's do it. Let's do it right now. They're under contract on 5 properties, and we're writing offers on 3 more properties. Now, these are unsolicited offers. I mean, these are properties that are not on the market. Sellers may very well say, no, I have no interest whatsoever in selling. But it could also be that those sellers right now think that, wow, in this time of economic uncertainty, the fact that somebody's coming forward with an offer, yeah, I'll take a look at it by all means. So my whole point in this is it's applying the 80-20. You could cast a huge wide net right now over the database of every person you've ever come in contact with. And I'm not telling you not to do that, but I'm just saying that there are ways that you can get the highest and greatest outcome by focusing on the people that are going to yield the highest outcome. Apply the 80-20 in your business, apply it in your life, apply it in your friendships, apply it in your health and nutrition. There's so many different ways to apply it. But make for yourself the list of those 10 goals. Identify what the 2 most important goals are. I shared with you for myself that for me in the last recession, being with RE/MAX was critical. If you're not already with RE/MAX, if you're an independent agent or an independent brokerage, I would highly, highly encourage you to look at the education that's available, look at the training you're seeing, the network that's available as part of this call here today. But for me, what helped me through the last recession, not just to survive it, but really to thrive through it, was to have the goal on focusing on self-improvement, focusing on education, and focusing on the things that I actually had control over, things that I could affect. How many of you have felt, just by a show of hands, a little bit of a sense of being overwhelmed or just helplessness with this whole COVID situation? At some point. I mean, even just to agree, I mean, the fact that you don't have control over buyers coming to your market, you don't have control over being able to go out and show property. I mean, it's okay. It's okay to feel overwhelmed or to feel, that it's a time of uncertainty. That's why it's so critical during a time of uncertainty to focus on the things that we have control over, the things that we can change, the things that we can do. And so with that, I'm going to I could go for hours and hours and hours, but I want to open up the floor to any questions and open it up for discussion with everybody else. But I hope that at least some of what I shared is a little bit helpful in looking at what you can do to apply 80-20 during the COVID-19 situation that we find ourselves in.
Thank you, John. This is amazing. I am glad that we have recorded this and we will send out the recorder to everyone. Several people have asked questions in the chat box. So I'm going to read them to you, John. Our friend Mike Simons. Hey, Mike. He wrote down, John, not everybody knows how to set goals. Can you give a few examples of goals so that they can set? This will hopefully spur some ideas for them. And then there is a follow-up question after you respond this one.
Okay. No, that's great. Sometimes sometimes there's good goals, sometimes there's bad goals. If we set good goals, then they usually have a tendency to have a domino effect. So for example, we might say to ourselves, maybe our goal is to take in as much education as possible, to become as knowledgeable as we can about our market and becoming a better sales agent, a better broker, a better leader, a better coach, whatever our role is, that we want to become better at that specific thing. It could be that another goal that we have is to increase our income. But by focusing on the first goal, the goal of becoming more educated, more knowledgeable, more experienced about our market, the byproduct of that is that we likely will also result in having a higher income, of being more effective at sales and generating more sales and having higher productivity. So one of the most important things when we're doing goal setting is to make sure, is it achievable and is it quantifiable? I mean, are we able to determine when we've met the goal? For example, it may be that our goal isn't necessarily to become more knowledgeable or better educated. It may be that our goal is to work towards a specific designation, or our goal is that we're going to identify or try to identify the top 5 videos in RE/MAX University that could have the biggest impact on referrals, on generating referrals from the network or generating international referrals. There's some great videos specific to referrals and international referrals. So those can be specific goals that we want to work on setting. But I think that what would be really good is I would love to see not so much the list of what your 10 goals are, but I'd like to see the list of what your 2 most important goals are. And if you'll send those to Ricardo, and Ricardo and I can share those together, then I'd be happy to provide some commentary or input on, either A, how to modify or adjust or change the goal so that it can be more easily quantified in terms of knowing when you've achieved it, and maybe steps you can do to work towards that goal. But I'd love to help out in that process. But I hope that helps to answer the question.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. And I also believe that goals need to be freaking scary. They need to be huge. They need to be big. And I will give you a quick example. See, I had the goal of losing 10 pounds, but I said, no, that's not a good goal, really. So I set a goal of, now many of you know, or some of you might know that, we have grandchildren in the family. They are less than 3 years old. So my new health goal for fitness, for health, is not to lose a few pounds, but my goal is to be healthy and strong when my great-grandchildren are born. That's a big goal. That's a goal that's gonna keep me going for 25 years. And that's the type of goals that we need to establish. Also, my goal is not to make some money, not to close an extra deal, not to have a good year. My goal in business is to leave a legacy for my great-grandchildren. I want my great-grandchildren to have a thriving company when they start. So that's an example of big goals in the long run. Now, Gabby Castillo, our friend Gabby Castillo. Hi, Gabby. Hi, Gabby. From Nicaragua, she asked a follow-up question about goals. Do you have goals tied to a deadline? Daily, weekly, yearly? Can you give examples of how you break down your goals to make them achievable every day?
The answer is yes. I mean, similar to Ricardo, and I'm going to talk about health and nutrition when I say this. I have a long-term goal. I've lost 75 pounds in the last 18 months. And that's part of a longer-term goal. I still have more weight that I would like to lose. And that's on a long-term basis, but I don't weigh myself on the scale every day. What I do every day to work towards that long-term goal is make sure that I walk at least 10,000 steps, which for me, because I have a long stride, is about 5 miles. So my daily goal is to make sure that I walk 5 miles a day. If I accomplish that daily goal, then I know that I'm going to achieve my monthly goal, which is a certain number of pounds per month lost. And I know that I'm working towards my long-term goal, which is overall health and nutrition. and a weight loss target that I don't have a specific date on. But yeah, I think it's really important. There's, you know, what gets measured is what gets managed. And so it's important to have short-term goals. If there's something that you have as a goal that's measurable and you're only measuring, let's say, for example, your goal is to, you know, if you had the goal to reach out and contact and to get on the phone and talk on the phone with past clients, if you set a goal of a certain number of people per month, and at the end of the month you haven't hit that goal, well, then you've let a whole month go by. If you break it down and you say, instead of it being, you know, 40 people a month, I want to talk to 10 people a week, then at the end of the week, if you haven't talked to 10 people, you may have had a bad week, but you can adjust your course correction and you can change what your priorities are to make sure that the next week you're calling and reaching the 10 people that you wanted to. If you say that you have a daily goal, and the daily goal is to make sure that you talk to at least one, preferably two, call it 1.5 people a day, you might have a bad day, but you're not going to have a bad week because you're measuring it as you go. So you want to have goals that are measurable, that are actionable, and that you can assess as you're going whether or not you're working towards them. But I think it's really important to have both long-term and short-term goals when you're applying 80-20.
Agree. Thank you. You have many questions. We're going to cover as much as possible. There is a question from Henry Zavaleta. He's along with his wife Carolina. They are owners of Remax Capital in El Salvador, and he has a question about advice for new agents. He says, John, please give us a couple of ideas for new agents in the network. What
Sure.
can they do? What can they do during this COVID-19?
Right. So if you're a new agent, if you don't have past clients, if you don't have people that you can reach out to that are part of your existing database, then above all else, more than anyone else, you should be focusing on the network and focusing on your education, on learning as much as you can in Remax University. There's a person who's on the call. Richie, are you on the call? Are you still here?
Yes, he is.
Okay, so Richie is in Ambergris Key, Belize. Richie is a new agent. I'm using him as an example only because I happen to know this firsthand. But Richie, how many Remax agents in the US and Canada have you reached out to in the last couple months, cold calling, to introduce yourself, to let them know that you're there for their Belize referrals? Can you just share just off the top? It don't have to be an exact number, but I know that that's a part of the protocol of what you've been doing, is to reach out as a new agent to introduce yourself to Remax agents in the network. Is that correct?
Correct. Ballpark about 1,500 agents.
Okay, and is this by email or by phone, or how have you done this?
Phone and email.
Phone and email. And have you had any sales result from you cold calling Remax agents to introduce yourself as an inbound referral?
Not yet.
Okay, I correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that you have had some clients that have come as referrals from that.
I had 2 sales from referrals, but I actually met the agents on the Remax Exchange Facebook page.
Oh, okay. So it came from that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, perfect. Well, so the point being that I appreciate it, Richie. I know that you weren't, expecting to be put on the spot there, so I really appreciate that. But the point is that as a new agent, you've got to look for ways to leverage the network, whether that's through through Facebook and Remax groups on Facebook, or reaching out to agents and brokerages. I can assure you, and I'm saying this to Richie, but I'm saying this to everybody that's on this call, that you're reaching out to those 1,500 agents by email or by phone is going to result in referrals. It's as simple as, if you buy a red car, or you're in the market for a red car, then all of a sudden when you're on the road, you notice how many red cars there are. Okay. As we come out of this current situation, and those RE/MAX agents happen to have clients who mention that they're going to be going on vacation to Belize or Costa Rica or Panama or wherever it might be, I can assure you that it's going to pop in their head that, oh, wait, I know somebody. I may not even know if they're in the right country or not, but I know who to call, and I know that that person can help put me in contact with the right person. So as a new agent, you want to leverage the network, and you want to get as much education as you can and look at different certifications. Two of them that I mentioned are SIPS and IRES. IRES is the International Real Estate Specialist designation, and SIPS is Certified International Property Specialist. And I don't know, I mean, I'm speaking off the top of my head, I don't know with the current situation if it's possible to work on either or both of those designations virtually and online. Ricardo, maybe that's something we can look into and see if that's something that we can find out the answer to, or even possibly help to spearhead to see if it's possible to help to work on that designation within the Caribbean and Central America region on a virtual basis.
Sounds great. Absolutely, we can do that. I think that's 80-20. You have a question from Leslie Stewart from Nicaragua. But first, and well, I'm going to read the question to you. This is going to put you on the spot, John. Leslie's asking, John, what's your #1 goal right now? but before you respond, I want to acknowledge a person that is here. He is our friend from Bermuda, Don Ricardo Wynn, in St. George, Bermuda. And he is a licensed agent, and he's pending his broker license, and he's excited to be here and wants to know more about RE/MAX franchises. Don Ricardo, welcome. We're happy that you're here. John, back to you for Leslie's question. What's your #1 goal right now?
Right now, at this exact time, my children are 22, 19, and my youngest daughter turns 15 this Sunday. And my #1 goal is to be the best role model and example that I can be for them. And that's a multifaceted goal because it pertains to how I live my life, how I conduct myself in business. My health and nutrition are part of it. I want to show them by my example how important my health and nutrition and well-being are, because I want to be there for them and for their children and for their grandchildren. I also want them to see that what I do in business and what I do for work is not just about income, that I want them to see that it's more important to me to change lives and to impact lives and to really try to bring about change in the world. And so, this kind of goes back to Mike Simon's question, because by my goal, my overarching master goal, or my umbrella goal, if you will, is to be the best role model and example that I can be for my children. Then there's so many sub goals of that come into play. And so, really affecting change and changing lives for the better is one of my goals, but it's a goal that comes about because of wanting to be an example and a role model for my children. My weight loss over the last year and a half has come about because of the goal of being a role model, an example for my children. My son, saw me working hard at getting in better shape and pursuing fitness and eating healthier and losing weight. And lo and behold, my son has dropped 50 pounds and is in the best shape of his life. And I don't take credit for that, but I do, give myself a little pat on the back that I was a source of inspiration as a role model and example. And that's really all I can hope to be as a dad.
Wow, that's amazing. That's very profound, John. Thank you so much for sharing something that is so personal and dear to your heart. And guys, please understand that RE/MAX is not just a system to sell houses. It's not that. RE/MAX is a lifestyle. We don't want you to have a good month. We want you to have a good life. And that's why we talk about things like family, like health, like also making more money and closing more deals, of course. But RE/MAX is a lot more than that. So, John, I think that response was amazing. Thank you. Let's see. Rico Garcia has a very interesting question here. Rico Garcia is the owner of Remax British Virgin Islands. And he says, everybody knows that John is all about 80-20. Now, John, are there any other factors besides 80-20 that you give credit to for your success?
I mean, the answer is yes. I do a tremendous amount of reading. I'm always, I mean, it's funny because my ideal vacation, so to speak, I mean, I love vacations, I really do. But to me, as much as I enjoy, being on a beach in a beautiful tropical setting, send me to a business seminar for 3 or 4 days, or send me to another, seminar on self-improvement. And anytime I'm learning and focusing on how to be better, to be a better person, to be a better speaker, to be a better coach, to be a better salesperson, anytime I can work on improving myself, that's where I get greater fulfillment, greater satisfaction. So, I mean, there's a whole list of reading material, a whole list of books that I can give. Interestingly, back in, when I joined Remax in 2009, August 2009, it was about, I guess 5 months after that, in January 2010. And this was part of, fulfilling that goal, that if I can outlearn you, then I will out-earn you. Part of the learning process, I had attended a Tony Robbins event, Unleash the Power Within, UPW as it's called. And in January 2010, I attended a Tony Robbins seminar on what's called business mastery. And it was a 5-day seminar in Las Vegas in January 2010. I then attended the follow-up to it in Fiji at Tony's resort there in Namale called Business Mastery 2. And at the time, Tony Robbins and his crew asked me to do a testimonial video. And so they recorded a testimonial video of me there in Fiji, asking me how business mastery as a course had impacted me and helped me. And at the time I said, well, I'm a very successful Remax agent, and my goal is to to have a brokerage, and then to have, I think I even said I wanted to have multiple brokerages. And if I recall correctly, I shared on the video that my goal was to apply all the learning and all the education that I could, that I wanted to be the #1 agent in the world. That was my goal, was to be the #1 Remax agent in the world. And in 2014, I was the #1 agent outside of the US and Canada. And so I met that goal. If I had not had the goal in the first place, I would not have accidentally become the #1 agent in the international network. It was because I had the goal and because I set specific sub-goals to work towards that. But it was really neat for me to go to some Tony Robbins conferences years later and to talk to his crew, and they were still using that testimonial video, and to tell them what I had accomplished. And I don't attribute it all to Tony Robbins, but the business mastery course that I went to was a piece of the puzzle of what has helped me to have some of the business accomplishments that I have. So my recommendation, Rico, I guess what I'm getting at is, don't ever stop learning. Don't ever stop taking in knowledge and information and increasing your education. I don't look at it like a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or a PhD, that once you've earned your master's degree, then you're done and there's no more education for you. We have the benefit of having educational materials available to us so that we never stop learning. And I try every day to become a better speaker, to be a better influencer, to be a greater source of encouragement, whether that's with people like yourselves on a call like this, or talking to my daughter this afternoon about her life goals and how she can achieve them and what I can do to help her to work towards those.
Thank you. Great answer. We're going to do one more question, and this is coming from Barry Gonzalez from Puerto Rico. And then I'm going to tell you guys what we have on the schedule for next Friday, a week from today. Okay, John, the question from Barry is, Do you use a CRM? Which one do you use? I want something easy and simple. What do you have in mind?
Okay, so one of the things that I've done, and this is part of the 80-20, is I've outsourced my CRM. I have a company that I have on retainer. I have them, manage the CRM for me. I use an app or a website called Missive, Missive. And so when I have emails come into Missive, then there's a team of people that are all able to see each and every email, and they can either respond from themselves or respond from me, as the case may be. And we can ping each other and assign tasks and assign responsibilities and whatnot. But I have them manage the database. But internally, I know that if an email comes in, that somebody is responding to it, and on top of it, whether I see it or not, and I can see in real time the thread of who's responding and handling it and taking care of it for me. But going back to the book 80-20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall, one of the things that Perry talks about with applying 80-20 in your life is, and again, this is another exercise I would encourage each and every one of you to do, is sit down and over the course of a week, and of course, this would apply more so during what I would consider a normal week of business, which right now these are not normal times for us. But if you look at during the course of a normal week of business, if you could break down how you spend your time on an hour-by-hour basis, then what you'll find is that there are many, many hours that you spend doing $5 or $10 an hour work, okay? So if you take take what your income was last year, divided by, roughly 2,000 hours, if there's 2,040 hours in a week times 50 work weeks, take your income divided by 2,000 hours, and that's roughly what the value of your time was if you were being paid a salary for it. Most of us are not on salary, but if you were to equate to an hourly basis, that's how you determine what your hourly rate is. The reality is, if you made 10 sales last year as a sales agent, then the time that you put into those 10 sales, you were earning a whole lot more per hour than a lot of the other time that you spend. Do we all agree that makes sense? In fact, if you could, I joke about the fact that if you made 10 sales last year and you knew what 10 clients those were and which days the sales were going to take place, it'd be nice to not have to show up to work the other 355 days of the year, right? We just show up the days that we actually make a sale, but it doesn't work that way. But going back to the analogy, if you look at your week, there's a lot of time during the week that you're doing menial tasks. You're doing tasks that are paying you your minimum wage, whatever your particular minimum wage is. There's other tasks that we do that instead of being $10 an hour tasks, maybe they're $100 an hour tasks. And then there's other times when we're face-to-face with a client and we're showing property, those might be times when we're making $1,000 an hour if you were to break it down on an hourly basis. So what I try to do for myself is I look at my own time, and as a very productive, high-wage earner, I want to make sure that I'm not spending any time at all on $10 an hour tasks. So anything that is a $10 an hour task, if the value of my time is multiples of that, if that value of my time over the course of a year is $100 an hour or $300 an hour or $1,000 an hour, then I don't want to spend even 1 hour doing $10 an hour work. If I can outsource that and pay somebody $10 an hour to do it, then I'm applying the 80-20. I'm getting leverage and I'm getting more benefit for my time. I had a hard time applying this in my life when it came to doing flyers, doing sales flyers for property, and creating PDFs. I really enjoy doing that, but it's a low value task in terms of how much time I would put into it, because I'm not a graphic designer by trade. I'm not super fast at it. I just enjoy it. And it's okay if I want to do it from a hobby standpoint, but I realized I was putting a lot of time into designing flyers, sales flyers and brochures, and it was something that I could turn around and hire somebody else to do for not very much money. And if I can pay somebody not very much money. So that was part of me applying the 80-20 in my life, is fire myself from the jobs that don't pay well and turn around and hire somebody else to do it instead, so that I can reserve my time. I started initially saying, I'm not going to do any $10 an hour jobs. I want to make sure everything I do, I'm targeting on the $100 an hour or $1,000 an hour value. And then over the course of time, I said, I don't want to do anything that's only going to yield $100 an hour, because I've been able to become more productive, more efficient with applying 80-20 in my life. I've outsourced all the $10 an hour work. Now I want to start outsourcing anything that's $50 or $100 an hour work. I want to focus on the stuff that's going to generate $1,000 an hour. When I was doing my field trips, and I relocated to where I spend most of my time now in Colorado instead of Belize. But when I was doing my real estate investor field trips for many years in Belize, I applied the 80-20 to the ultimate format, to where I only worked with clients 4 days a month. But 4 days a month, I would have 20 clients that would pay $1,000 each for me to spend 4 days with them. And at the end of the 4 days, 85% of them would buy a property. But my entire focus was on those 4 days. And then the rest of the month was the sales follow-up to those 4 days, and generating the leads and following up with the leads and answering questions to get the next field trip prepared for. But again, any time that I was spending with a client was no longer $10 an hour work or $100 an hour work. It was applying to being 1,000 or higher per hour value. So my whole point in all of that is identify the things that you can outsource that are the lowest cost things to outsource. Start with that and go from there. And it may not be that CRM is something that you want to, when I say outsource, doesn't mean that you don't have a handle on it, doesn't mean you don't have control over it. But for me, it's an example of something that I have outsourced.
Fantastic, thank you. So it's my microphone is on. It's a matter of identifying the tasks that you can delegate them, build a team, lead a team. Great response. Thank you so much. All right, guys, I would like to share with you what we have on schedule for next Friday. That's a week from today. This is our friend Ann Miller. Ann Miller is Vice President of Luxury and Commercial for RE/MAX World Headquarters out of Denver, Colorado. And next week, she will speak to us about the RE/MAX collection. As most of you know, the RE/MAX collection is a niche brand that we have to market luxury properties, high-end properties. We know we have lots of high-end properties in the Caribbean and Central America. Well, this is your chance to learn how to promote these properties. I believe it's 2 or 3 weeks from now that you see here. One second, I'm gonna grab my laser pointer. Okay, so next week is about luxury properties. And I believe it's 2 weeks later, we will talk about RE/MAX commercial. In other words, commercial properties. Commercial properties are warehouses, commercial spaces, office spaces, malls, and things like that. So we have great things in schedule for the coming weeks. Now, we're gonna need your help. Andrea, can you talk to us and lead us in the process of the picture that you wanna take?
Yeah, so we're gonna do a screenshot like we did a few weeks ago, because I think today we broke the record for how many attendees we had. So I'm so thankful that everybody is here. I know some people have other calls and stuff and have to head out, but if you can stick around for another minute, we're gonna do a series of screenshots. So everybody turn on your video and give us your best smile. It takes me a few seconds to get all the pages, so keep smiling. All right, let's see, starting now. Okay, keep smiling, everybody. Here comes another one. Hang on one moment. Okay, another one, keep smiling. Let's see. Almost done. All right, last one. Everybody smile. Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrea.
You're welcome.
John, thank you very much for this webinar. It was amazing, and I'm glad that we recorded it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for all of you attending. Really appreciate it.
All right. See you in a week, guys.
See you in a week, guys. Keep safe.
Bye, everyone. Yes, bye-bye. Thank you.
We love you guys.
Keep
Thank you for all you
safe.
do. Be safe. Stay healthy. We love you. Thank you. Adios.
Adios.
Adios, everyone. Thank you.
Adios, adios.
Adios.
Adios, ciao.
Adios, ciao.
Oh, Tarek.
He's our youngest member.
That was the big voice from Bermuda.
Yes. Bye. Talk soon.
See you next week.
Yes. See you next week.
Guys, thank you very
Bye.
much. Ahora, ¿cómo están?
Hi, everyone from St. Lucia.
And Lucia, wow, amazing.
I didn't.
Yes, you did.
Jennifer. Bye bye. Adios.
Estoy tratando de descifrar cómo se salía, espérate. ¿Cómo era la cosa? Ay, caray, ¿dónde era?
¿Dónde era? Dice.
Ok, ¡ay, left meeting! ¡Ya! ¡Chao!
All right, bye.
Go ahead.
Bye.
Bye, Tarek.
Bye, Tarek. We love you.